Cardale Jones, national championship winning quarterback at The Ohio State, now does a great job CBS Sports College Football as he's a part of the CBS Sports HQ team as an analyst, and he'll be a part of CBS Sports HQ's on-site coverage in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game between Oregon and Penn State, which will air at 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday on CBS and Paramount+. Cardale Jones also actually probably has the greatest college football tweet I've ever seen when it was, why should we have to go to class if we came here to play football? We ain't come to play school. Classes are pointless. I will never, never, never forget that tweet, and I thought it was awesome. Cardale, appreciate the time. How you been?
First and foremost, thanks for having me. And unfortunately, I will never forget that tweet either. And unbelievable, great supporters and followers of football and college sports and social trends. They will not let me forget that tweet either.
Did you realize it in the moment what that was going to become? Because that was a viral tweet.
You know what? Absolutely not. But I say this and I stick to my guns with this. I said all the time, man, like, listen, man, I blew up Twitter. That was literally the first viral thing that went out. And I can remember the next morning after the tweet, because we was getting ready. We were 2 days away from playing in a huge game versus Nebraska in a night game that was coming in and things like that. And watching every news outlet. And that's all they were talking about. Yeah, this college athlete at Ohio State took his thoughts to Twitter and tweeted out. And if you don't know what Twitter is, it's a social media platform where you can express yourself in 130 characters or less.
Yes.
Like, it was like insane, but never thought that we will be, 10, 12 years down the road. 13, and people still talking about that tweet.
And you had a great run, obviously, at Ohio State. You guys won a championship. The circumstances you guys overcame was unbelievable. But still, every time I think about your name, even though you lost me a lot of money when you guys beat Alabama, I had two of my best friends went to Michigan. One of my friends, that's like a Fugazi football fan. He's Ohio State alum. We're like, all right, we're just betting against Ohio State because we don't want to see him be happy. You lost me a lot of money that day, but still, the first thing I think about is that tweet all these years later.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad you remember that tweet, and I'm glad that I hit those pockets just a little bit. Just a little bit.
I was in college at that time, so the bank account wasn't that big. But at the time,
I know it hurt. Yeah, I know
losing
it had to hurt
$40 is like losing like $1 million back then or something like that. So,
that's a month and a half of no eating.
Yeah, and a lot of beer that we missed out on. To be clear. All righty, let's get to the game yesterday. I didn't think Michigan was going to win. I like Michigan. I root for Michigan. I thought Ohio State, this was going to be their year. How do you process it 2 days later as Ohio State gets stunned on their home turf?
It's tough. I think stunned is the best word to look at it because, no offense to Michigan, they did a great job in their game plan, but this has been one of the lesser Michigan teams over the last probably 10 years, honestly. When you go back and look at some of the players they produced at an extremely high level, some of the games they played in, some of the outcomes they got. And then you look on the other side of the ball, Ohio State, loaded with talent, loaded with great coaches. And I think, we just failed to execute in a few moments where you can kind of almost circle down and pinpoint down, say, hey, this would really cost us a game. It was too many of those moments where the lack of execution ultimately cost them in the long run.
What did you make of the game plan? A lot of people wanted to see Ohio State throw the football more. I know Will Howard didn't play well, but because of how elite those wide receivers are for Ohio State, how about the game plan that Chip Kelly and Ryan Day devised?
You know what? I'm not too critical on the game plan at all. I think, maybe potentially some of the game plan was altered a little bit earlier in the game when Will took a big hit and didn't know how he would respond to that. Not necessarily how he would respond, but what impact that had on him moving forward. On top of they already, and I said this before the game, guys, and I said, this would be the perfect storm for Michigan to actually go in there and stun Ohio State, because you look across the board, Ohio State receivers, quarterback, running backs, everything. I think running backs are very here because Mullins and Edwards are really great. Backs, Junkins and Henderson. But you look at everything, where is Michigan going to win this battle? And I thought it was going to be up front because not necessarily they're that much better because of all the shuffling around that the Ohio State offensive line has had to overcome this season with 3 key injuries and one less than 10 days ago, with your signal caller at the line of scrimmage, which is center. And Michigan is really good up front, especially on a D-line. I think that's the strength. That front seven is the strength of that whole team and has been for the last couple of years. So, and then you look at that rivalry, you look at the stats, over the last 22 years, the teams who won that game has dominated and won the rushing battle. Well, what do Michigan do really well? They run the ball, they smother that play clock, they smother the time of possession, and they want to get into a one possession game late in the fourth quarter, and they're going to have a shot with anybody in the country at that point using their formula. And they executed it.
Cardale Jones here with us. I respect everything you just said, but I think the last few years, clearly, he's admitted it, has taken a toll on Ryan Day as it should. And Harbaugh stressed so much about being a tougher football team, lining guys up, right, dominating in the trenches. And to keep on attacking Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, it's almost like Ryan Day said, I wanted to win, and I want to kind of win the way that you guys have been beating us the last few years. That's the way I kind of just interpreted his game plan.
I think a lot of people was looking at the run game, and specifically when they was calling plays a little uncharacteristic for Ohio State over the last couple of weeks, especially with the two great backs that they have. But again, I think that was potentially a product of all the moving parts on the offensive line and trying to find strengths and trying to find Michigan's weakness in the running game. If I was a play caller, will I recall that game differently in the run aspect? I don't know. I didn't watch all the film of breaking it down and saying, hey, this is where I think we need to win these one-on-one battles. Now, I do got to give credit to Michigan. This is completely unbiased here because of, what I do now for a living. Sure. Michigan did a great job of winning those one-on-one battles. And that's what it really came down to, those one-on-one battles between the big guys up front. I mentioned that stat earlier. The team who won the Russian battle usually wins that game now 23 straight years. And we was just unable to manufacture. When I say we, Ohio State clearly was unable to manufacture any type of consistent running game that was ultimately going to help us in the long run.
If you were a leader on that Ohio State team, because they're still going to the playoff, they still have a talented team. We'll see how they're going to be able to flush this one, or is it going to derail them in the postseason? What would your message be coming off this one to the guys in the locker room?
Simple. The ultimate goal is still there. I mean, you look at so many stories that came out about this team in the beginning of the season, really dating back to the preseason, was national championship or bust. And I argued that motive in that narrative because, first thing is first is beating that team up north, which, they came up short. Competing for a Big Ten title, and usually that runs through the team up north. And who stops you from that goal? Well, they did. So you won't be playing for a Big Ten title this weekend, and then ultimately putting yourself in position to compete and win a national title. Well, that's the ultimate goal, and this is no knock on the rivalry. This is all due respect to the rivalry. It will be a little different, but if I can only pick one, is it to beat the team up north or to be labeled a national champ that year? Me personally, I felt both of those feelings. I think I'm going with the national championship. Sure. One more, just because, it's literally the national championship. It's the biggest stage of college football. And this year is going to be the biggest stage of college football ever with the new format of the 12-team playoff system.
Do you still believe they could win a national championship?
I do think so. And I think when you look at teams all around the country, you see some of these losses from quote unquote lesser opponents or losses that snuck up on people. It's a matchup thing. I just think right now and 2 days ago, Michigan just matched up a little bit better given them circumstances versus Ohio State and took advantage of those one-on-one battles. But you look at Oregon, you look at some of these other top teams around the country, you look at Texas, you look at who was another time? We look at Georgia. Well, I don't think they have as great of interior defensive linemen as Michigan, which ultimately could potentially help Ohio State matchups better when they're getting back to doing some of the things they was doing against great teams like Penn State and Indiana and going down to the wire with Oregon.
Cardale Jones here with us for a few more minutes. It's a great job now, CBS Sports HQ. Did you have any problem with Michigan planting the flag after the game and then the response by Ohio State?
Personally, no. I think when you have you got 200 kids I guess so deep into that rivalry, one side has never lost, one side has never won, and I think emotions are going to eventually roll over in some type of thing like that. But the way you stop that is you win that game if you're Ohio State. You don't have to worry about that. And then, why wouldn't I personally expect the Michigan to do something like that? This team is not going to the playoffs. All week, all year, they heard how bad they were, what Ohio State was going to do to these guys and things like that. And for them to come into Ohio State Stadium and take that win in a manner that they did, I mean, I'm not surprised they didn't do more. And I understand on the flip side, Ohio State responding the way they responded, in particular, captain leader Jack Sawyer. He never beat this team, and he still has so much pride. This is a Columbus kid. This is an Ohio kid, right? He has more pride, and those guys has more pride to see that happen. Now, when you saw that happen years ago with the Baker Mayfield situation, well, that team wasn't on the field. The team was in the locker room. It was long after before Mayfield planted that flag. And I personally said I never had an issue with it either, because the way you stop that is you win that game. But unfortunately, they came up short.
Let me ask you about Ryan Day. Let's say they don't win the national championship. Do you think he's definitely back next year as the Ohio State coach?
I think so. And I gave this example many times actually going into this game, and when people were talking about the national championship or bust type of scenario, or if he gets if he don't pull it off versus a team up north, what is going to happen to him? What is his future is going to look like? I give examples of programs like Clemson with Dabo Swinney and Michigan with Harbaugh, his first 5 or 6 years. Well, he was 0-5, 0-6, both of them in very similar records to their in-state conference, in-state rivals. Clemson with South Carolina, and then clearly Harbaugh with Michigan. And after year 6, 7, and keep going forward, this team, he switched it. They both turned it around, and I give a lot of credit to the athletic department for sticking with these guys, believing these guys, seeing all the small steps he's making in other areas, seeing what he's doing outside of that game, and saying, listen, he's this close away. He's this close away to really changing that dynamic. And what happened in year 7 and 8 and 9 and things like that for these coaches, Harbaugh started going into bigger games. He started winning those top 10 matchups. Ultimately started beating Michigan when Coach Meyer ended up leaving. And Dabo Swinney, the same thing. Both coaches having a national title under their belt within the next 3 years of those 0-5 starts with those taking over as head coaches. So I think as a Buckeye Nation, be patient, be understanding. Let's not get ready and throw this guy away so fast when he has done so much great things for this university and for this football program. Let's look at the bigger picture versus this one game.
I think there's a difference on what should happen and what will happen. I do believe he will be back. If they did move on, though, right, you could throw Mike Vrabel in there. I think Mike Vrabel's going to stay in the pros and get a head coaching job in the NFL. Do you think Urban Meyer would be interested in returning to a college sideline?
No, I don't think so. You made a great point about Mike. Mike has always been a pro's pro, and I think with the new things you got to deal with in NIL and the portal, I don't think he want to deal with that on the college level. And then I think Coach Meyer as well, the way his culture, the way he implement things, I don't think it's the best for this society, which I'm a product of his culture and product of the way he done things, and ultimately we got the results we want. Now, some of the things that he used to do, he would probably be in jail if he tried to do those things now to build that program, which I never had an issue with. But hey, we were changing times now. But I don't think you take that risk if you're a university of hitting a reset button, because we saw it so many times around the country. I mean, Florida State is still trying to rebound from losing Fisher. Fisher go to A&M. Jimbo Fisher go to A&M. They're still trying to rebound now after getting rid of him in 3 or 4 years where he was there. And there's so many different examples around the country like that. I think you stick this. Ryan Day is the guy. Let's not get this thing twisted. It's not like he's not making the significant changes each and every year to hopefully improve each and every year. And let's not forget, an improvement for this guy is basically going undefeated because he's winning 10, 11 games a year. So it's not like he's creeping around that 8 and 4 marks like that. So my message to Buckeye Nation and to any coaches around the country in this position, I mean, they're just getting ready to throw away Marcus Freeman after that loss versus NIU. And now they in the top 5 in the whole conference, the whole country, and going to make a playoff run. Be patient.
Urban was a tough coach to play for. I'm shocked on that one,
He was. He was a great coach to play for. Listen, I tell people about Urban Meyer, you like him more when you don't have to deal with him.
That's unbelievable. One more on Ohio State, then I'll ask about the Big Ten championship game, and then we'll let you run. When the transfer portal was open, I said Ohio State in the offseason should go get Cam Ward. Obviously, Cam Ward goes to Miami. Miami's now not going to make the playoffs after blowing that game to Syracuse. Have you been fine with what you've seen from Will Howard, or do you think maybe they should have done more in the offseason to bring in a better quality of quarterback?
No, I have no issue with what they brought in. I have no issue if they would have kept Kyle McCord, because one thing about all three of those guys, especially Kyle, Cam, and Will, is they're veteran leaders, right? With this team in Ohio State in particular, that team down in Miami, that team at Syracuse, all they was missing was that final piece of veteran leadership. Kyle was only 1 year under his belt of starting only 12 games. I expected everything that I saw this year from Kyle McCord at Syracuse. Far as that jump from year one to year two being a starter, far from sitting 2 years behind C.J. Stroud at Ohio State and going through the ups and down battles that he went through at Ohio State. I mean, the guy won 11 games. And to see his growth at a place like Syracuse with a lot less talent, it just talked to his growth and his leadership and his ability as a quarterback in particular himself. Same with Cam Ward. He played a lot of football over at Washington State and led them to some huge games and was in a lot of those big games because of the things he was able to do. Go to a place like Miami, where the only thing was missing at that point with the leaving of Tyler Van Dyke was that veteran leadership at quarterback and a little bit more playmaking ability. It looked like Ohio State wanted to get more back to the old days of the J.T. Barris and Braxton Millers and Justin Fields, or a little bit more mobile quarterback. So they went to go get that in Will Howard, but also another veteran leader who has played a lot of ball, who's won a Big 12 championship, who had wielded his team almost single-handedly to a lot of victories with K-State. Putting him in a system like at Ohio State with a lot of playmakers, at that point, you really just asking him to take care of the football. And then, hey, once you got to be Superman, which we saw him be in a few plays and a few drafts this year, go play your game. And I think all three scenarios have worked out for all three quarterbacks.
Do you think McCord would have beat Michigan this go-around if he was a quarterback on Saturday?
You never know. And I like I said, I think I don't think the lack of quarterback play or the quarterback play period was a factor of beating this team. I think still you look at the game, we missed 2 field goals. And even when we win that game, I'm not going to say we won that game because the quarterback played. Will Howard played great, even though the two turnovers, that uncharacteristic turnovers from Will Howard, they were still in a position to win the game. So I don't think that one or another quarterback would have gave this team the best opportunity to win the game.
All righty, let me get your thoughts on this Big Ten championship game. I didn't think Penn State was going to be here. I thought it was going to be Ohio State going up against Oregon, and we were going to get a rematch. Well, what's your first thought on Oregon going up against the Penn State Nittany Lions?
You know, this is going to be good. I go back to those matchup things. I think Penn State matches up really well with Oregon on the defensive side, and I think Penn State is not going to look to go back and drop back. I would imagine 30-plus times to throw the ball in the air. I think it's one of those scenarios where they try to limit the time of possession to a high-power offense like Oregon and really just control the line of scrimmage. And if that's the game plan, I think they match up really well versus an Oregon team like that. I mean, this Penn State team really, for the most part, played Ohio State just as tough as Oregon did. And clearly the lack of playmakers really cost them that game. But you look on the defensive side of the ball, that front seven is the strength of this Penn State team, and they're going to have to come up big if they want to stop and win the Big Ten championship and be the number one team in the country, Oregon. It's the only team that's been consistent all year round.
He is Cardale Jones, national championship winning quarterback. Now does a great job as a pretty much national championship football analyst, CBS Sports HQ. Cardale will be a part of CBS Sports' HQ on-site coverage in Indy for the Big Ten championship, which will air at 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday on CBS and Paramount+. Cardale, appreciate the time. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Zach.